and I'll begin recording as well.
Okay. All right, well, welcome to the Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design. This is October 6, 2021. We're just going to wait a couple minutes. We're waiting on one board member to log into Zoom to join us tonight. So if you just be patient, we'll get kicked off here in just a moment. We will have a quorum tonight. We just meet a quorum, 4 members. Unfortunately, we have 3 that are not able to attend. So we're waiting on our 4th member to join us. Hopefully she's not having technical difficulties. Appreciate your patience. We're waiting on one more member to join us. I'm just going to maybe call her mobile phone. So I want to mute myself just temporarily. All right, we just learned that she's stuck in traffic and having trouble with her phone. She's trying to log on. The busy lives we live during COVID-19. So again, we appreciate your patience for trying to get our last member tuned in. Well, in the interest of time, yes, I believe so. Okay. All right, we think she's called in to the attendees, so we're going to promote her to panelist.
Well, unfortunately, I'll only be able to unmute her.
Okay.
She can't be promoted as, but if you hit
Oh,
*9, she should be able to unmute herself.
Yes.
Can you hear me? This is
Yes.
Ruthie. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ruthie, we can hear you. Yes.
Y'all, I'm sorry. I usually join on my phone and it's not working for me today. So I'm having to call in until I can get back to my computer.
Okay.
But I'll be on video soon, I promise.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. All right. All right. So, well, welcome to the October 6th, 2021 Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design meeting. Unfortunately, we had 3 members not able to attend. 2 of them typically are our chair and co-chair. So we're going to put Mr. Kelvin Hugie on the spot, but I'm going to assist as much as I can. So we're going to kick the meeting off, and we thank you again for your patience. So I'm going to open with a couple of slides. The virtual meeting protocol is as such. Staff will control the slides displayed throughout the meeting. Applicants, staff, board members, and members of the public should give their name first whenever speaking. Applicants and board members and members of the public must be sworn in before speaking for the first time. Only attendees who have registered to speak before the deadline at noon today may speak during the meeting. Video and microphone have been disabled for all attendees. Attendees will only be given the capabilities to speak when they are called on during the public comment period. Board members who need to recuse themselves from voting will be temporarily removed from the meeting and readmitted prior to addressing the next item. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return to the regular meeting. Chat has been disabled for everyone. This meeting is being recorded. So this is where our chairperson would typically step in. So I'm going to do so tonight. So please bear with me. This is the opening statement. This is the October 6th meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design. Present are Jeff Webb, Jennifer DeSantis, Ruthie Ravenel, Kelvin Hugie. Present from the planning staff are Lee Batchelder, Scott Valentine, and Eric Schultz. These proceedings are being recorded, and we ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, usually the Board of Zoning Appeals treats the matter as being uncontested and passes it as a matter of course. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal by the applicant. When we close the public hearing portion of the meeting for the particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only, we will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals Site Design has the authority to do three things. One, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Two, grant special exceptions, a fact-finding function of the board. And three, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum are present and qualified to vote. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings: that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a ordinance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. All right. So, public comment. Order on each application. The chair announces each application, followed by staff presentation and recommendation. Staff will call on applicant to present their application after being sworn in by the chair. Staff will open the public comment period to receive comments from registered attendees in favor, first spoken, then written. Each speaker will be sworn in by the chair. Staff will then recognize registered attendees for public comments in opposition after a speaker is sworn in, first spoken, then written. Staff will recognize the applicant for a short rebuttal. Chair will then close the public comment period and begin board discussion. Providing comment. If you submitted to request to speak on an item before the deadline, staff will call your name when it is your turn to speak and enable your microphone. Your microphone will be disabled after you're done speaking. If you may only speak once for each item, and you must state your name and address for the record, or you will not be permitted to provide comment. Board discussion. Following public comment period, board members can make comments, ask questions, and make motions. After a motion and a second, board members will vote aye in favor or nay not in favor. If the vote is not unanimous, the chair will poll each member for their vote. The chairman should announce the vote on the motion and the final decision on the application. If a board member needs to recuse, he or she will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. And again, if the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all audio and video on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return to the regular meeting. All right. So I had failed to post and advertise the minutes from the September Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, so they're technically deferred. We'll address those at the November meeting. So there have been no items deferred or withdrawn, so we'll start off the agenda with item A1, application number 2110-06-A1, Bees Ferry Road and Sanders Road. This is in West Ashley. TMS number, actually a portion of the TMS number, 286-00-00-001. Request a variance from section 54-227 to allow the removal of 13 grand trees. Request a special exception from section 54-327 to allow the removal of 3 grand trees. Owner, Bear Island LLC 2, applicant Thompson Hutton. The property is zoned LB and DR 1F. So this is the application that was submitted a number of months ago. It has been updated. This was on an earlier agenda this year, but was deferred. So they are now prepared to be heard. This is their variance test explanation. And we'll address some of those, and the applicant has been asked to address those as well. As you can see here, the tract of land is quite large. It's actually bisected by Sanders Road. We are dealing with the left side or the west side of Sanders Road only. As you can see here, it has split zoning, LB limited business, and the back half is DR1F. Today, the property is wooded. It has some freshwater wetlands that are forested. As you can see, again, bisecting the site, there's a fairly large Dominion Energy transmission line easement that traverses across the site. This is the full-blown protected and grand tree survey. As you can see, the shape of the property on this side of Sanders is not exactly square or rectangular. You can see the easement with the overhead power lines. And then also please note the 3 freshwater wetlands. There's a linear one planned right. There's a isolated wetland kind of in the center. And then the bottom left corner is freshwater wetlands, and you can see they surveyed a good portion of that, but not all of it. The proposed application in front of you tonight is for a multifamily apartment development. What's unusual about this is that on the plan bottom, that large white area is a permitted single-family subdivision, and with that slight arc you can see at the top of that white area. And there had been a proposed road that would leave Sanders Road and traverse through this tract and end up intersecting with Bees Ferry, where you see their proposed entrance. That was planned as a public road at one point in time. So the subdivision actually was approved with a stub out to that future road. So this project needs to build a small piece of public road off of Sanders, and it curves into that existing subdivision, and then their private driveway would then leave that public road into the apartment complex. So that's that long, narrow drive to the right of the pond area. And then, of course, they are providing or proposing a major intersection with Bees Ferry Road, their main entrance off of Bees Ferry, as you see top left. And then, of course, the surface parking lot and a total of 8 buildings, one of them being the amenity and leasing area. So I traversed the site many months ago and visited the grand trees under consideration tonight. This is a blow up of the top half. We discovered a 61-inch live oak. That's that largest blue circle in that area to the right of the plan where the entrance drive enters in and intersects the first section of parking. And working through DRB, a lot of conversations with Design Review Board on the placement of buildings, how this apartment complex would feel from a user's perspective, the main entrance and how that building would act as a terminus. It struggled through DRB, and it's kind of unusual to get DRB before trees, but in this case, we allowed it to go to DRB to get some feedback from that board. So they set up the project with a grand green space with that live oak being the terminus of the entrance drive on the south. And then, of course, the building will be designed to act as a phenomenal entrance feature off of Bees Ferry Road. And then surface parking is always a consideration. The developers want parking within close proximity to the units, but you can start to see the makings of some really good green spaces throughout the community. And this is the layout we're considering today. There's a trail system that will go around the wetland in the center and then continue to traverse across and around a large stormwater detention area, which is on the south side of the transmission line. So again, this shows the public road coming off of Sanders and then a private drive that takes off toward the north to the apartment buildings with a wonderful edge of stormwater detention and grand trees. So the applicant obviously had a certified arborist go out and evaluate the trees. Of course, then I visited the site with the engineer and others and verified the trees. What you see tonight here is the spreadsheet, tree number, the size, the species, the category, the grade, the comments about the tree, and we have photos that will follow. But I modified this. The 3 purple lines are the trees that require a special exception. Note that they're water oaks. The trees in green are the trees that require a variance. And you can note their grades, their size. And then, of course, the yellow trees were determined not to be grand, and the others are being preserved. Staff recommends this. I'll comment on this, but staff feels that 4 of the trees requested in the pond area can be preserved, and with the protected trees maintained around them, they can just become part of the green space. The trail will be modified to meander around these trees and so on and so forth. So I want you to keep that in mind there. Staff will also recommend that the areas that I identified here in red are not cleared during bulk clearing, that these would be preserved as large tree save areas. And then as the plan develops and how they program some of that open space, as you can see some paths and what have you in those areas, then we'll have a phase 2 tree protection barricade plan in which allows very selective removal of trees, but we want to keep as much canopy intact as possible. Here's the trees. Tree 2 is one that I'm recommending to be saved in the open space. As you can see, it's a very strange double leader poplar tree. I think it must have fallen at one time and then kind of got vertical again. But if it's in open space, I see no harm in maintaining it. Tree 3 to be saved in open space. Again, a singular stem poplar. Tree 7 is to be saved and recommended to be saved in open space. A hickory, single stem hickory, again in open space. Tree 11 is a double water oak. As you can see, it has double leader, not the best union at the base. Tree 15 is a 29-inch black gum. Although a category 1, it is a C grade. It has a very strange lower trunk, indicating maybe some decay and poor form. Tree 17, again, I believe they can modify the pond. This is a single stem hickory, saved in open space. Tree 27, water oak with a significant lean, partially uprooted. Tree 29, a water oak. As you can see, there's a cavity in the base, making it a D, broken top, hollow. Tree 41, red oak, again, a cavity in the base. Tree 43, a live oak. Its position didn't work to our advantage, and plus it does have a fairly large scar. I don't know, storm damage, or maybe there was a fire at one point in this remnant forest, and it does have a decay in the base. Tree 45 is a red oak. It's poor form and fork, weak connection. And tree 56, a live oak, grade C suppressed. I believe they weren't able to get captured photos for tree 58 and 59. Here's 45, here's 46. Got some issues. So staff recommends approval with the condition to plant 209 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the project site. Must have a certified arborist prune and treat the grand and non-grand trees within 25 feet of any construction. Must use 4-foot chain link fence as tree protection barricades. Must preserve tree 2, 3, 7, and 17 in the pond as per exhibit shown. No improvements within the tree protection zone of the 61 live oak, 61-inch live oak in the central open space. And 6, related to my exhibit, must provide large tree save areas in the areas shown in red on the exhibit that must be preserved during bulk clearing operations. A phase 2 tree protection barricade plan will be developed as the open space improvements are further developed through DRB and TRC process, with the goal of maintaining protected trees and canopy cover and limit construction activity in the areas. So with that said, I will zoom back up to the site plan, overall site plan, and we need to recognize Scott, Brian Riley. Brian, can you hear us? Brian, can you hear us?
Good evening, Eric.
Good evening, Brian. And who else is on your team that I should recognize?
Davis Development, Lance Cherno and Fred Hazel.
Okay, Lance. And who was the second individual?
They should be together.
Okay. All right. And with that, I want to turn it over to Chairman Hugie, who will swear you in.
Can the applicant hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
We do.
We do. We do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and fellow board members. This is Brian Riley with Thomas & Hutton, representing the developer, Davis Development, on this project. They're joining us tonight as well, Lance Chernow and Fred Hazel. I'd like to start out by thanking staff, specifically Eric and his zoning staff, as well as the DRB staff at the city. As he alluded to, we've been working on this project for quite some time. And the biggest challenges with this project has been the trees, as well as the stormwater requirements associated with the Church Creek drainage basin. Those two elements alone have been a major guiding factor in the site plan you see before you tonight. We do feel like that there are unique and extraordinary circumstances with this project. I mean, it's quite a large project. It's a 50-acre multifamily development with only a little over 300 units, which is pretty unique. Generally, you can do a 300-unit development on about 15 acres of land. The wetlands on this site, along with the transmission easement, the Church Creek drainage basin requirements, as well as the density of the trees on this site. And as you can see by the overall site plan, the blue shaded trees on this site plan are high quality grade B trees, and there's quite a few of them on this site. We went through several site plan iterations. We presented staff with an initial, we met with Eric and his team. We made some tweaks. We went to DRB. We got their feedback, made some more tweaks. This is probably about the 5th or 6th version of the site plan that has evolved. And we do feel like that this has come out in a good spot, especially the grand live oak, the 61-inch that Eric mentioned. You know, we're going to make that a feature of the site and celebrate it. And we think it's going to be a huge benefit to the future residents of this complex. And then overall, with the amount of open space and then the remaining trees that we're saving on site, we do feel like that this will be a successful project and will be something that future residents are proud to be in. We were, with the trees that Eric's recommended saving in the pond, we don't have any objections to that, and we can certainly work around that. So removing those trees from the variance request, that we're able to retain right at 88% of the grand trees on this site, which is pretty phenomenal. And so we're excited about that. We agree with Eric's findings. We certainly want to work with staff as we move forward in developing those open spaces. And we can do that as we move through the TRC and DRB process. That's all I have. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Does any board members have any questions of Mr. Riley?
I have one. Jennifer DeShantis.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's a lot of trees to keep track of. And I'm just wondering where tree 39 is. Would you be able to point that out? It's 29-inch live oak that has a grade of B.
The tree 39?
Yes, sir.
It's the very top left of the page, and where the right turn lane's required off of Bees Ferry Road. Eric's pointing at it.
You see my cursor?
Oh,
Sure.
somebody.
Do we have a picture of that tree at all?
I don't think we have a picture of that tree.
Okay. Seeing where it's located and that we would definitely need that turn lane, I think speaks for itself. But that was just from the tree grades, the only tree that I see that kind of disappeared there, if that makes sense.
Agreed. We certainly looked about trying to save that tree. The location, the access location there off of Bees Ferry is fixed, and Eric may can speak to this a little bit more due to, I think there's another planned entrance directly across Beast Ferry, Verdier.
Yes, yes.
And so the city felt very strongly that we aligned the main entrance there. In which I mean, we agree. It makes sense from a traffic and safety perspective. And then of course, with that comes the right turn lane from also a traffic and safety perspective.
No, I can absolutely agree with that. And it's probably better to have to not have accidents down the road, because we need to have the proper alignment for traffic to safely in and egress the site. So thank you for pointing that out.
And
Yes, ma'am.
Jen, thank you, because for some reason in my table, I skipped over tree 39. So I have to state that I'd have to amend the mitigation. As you see, I forgot to strike it green. That would be the D grade tree 39, live oak. That's the one on the edge of the road. So that's 100% of the DBH inches. So 238.5 mitigation. I apologize for that. I missed it.
We forgive you, Eric.
Any other questions of staff for Mr. Riley? Would any of the other members of your team like to speak, sir?
I'm not aware. Lance, you want to say anything?
Just other than we really appreciate all the staff's effort in this board tonight, and especially, all the work that staff Eric put in trumping around the site with Mr. Hazel, who's sitting with me this evening.
Lance, could you just state your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry, Lance Cherno with Davis Development. I apologize.
And address.
1132 Briarcliff Road, Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Mr. Chair, there was no one registered to speak in support or opposition. And also, we received no written comment on this application.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. So we will close this for public discussion and entertain a motion from the board.
I'll move to approve with staff recommendations.
Any discussion? Second? Does anyone second the motion by Mrs. Ravenel?
I'll second it. Jennifer DeShantis.
Thank you, Mrs. DeShantis. So we'll move to a vote. So Mrs. DeShantis, we have a motion to approve. I'm assuming you are a yay in favor.
Yay, I am.
Okay. Mrs. Ravenel,
I in favor.
Mr. Webb,
I in favor.
and I, Ms. Hugia, I am in favor. You have approval, sir?
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, moving into the B agenda items. Agenda item B1, application number 2110-06B1, 695 Citadel Haven Drive. This is in West Ashley. TMS number 310-03-00-075 and 310-08-00-030. Request a variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of one grand tree. The owner is 70 NC Real Estate LLC and Anderson West Ashley Office LLC. The applicant is Hoyt and Barini LLC, and the property is zoned GBA, which means accommodations overlay. This is the application. This is their description of the variance test. This is a tree requiring a variance, not a special exception. The two properties are located on Citadel Haven Drive, as well as having frontage on the operation that's expanding has operations on Town Center Drive. Both parcels are zoned GB, general business, and they are in the overlay zone. As you can see here, this is an aerial showing the West Ashley Toyota or the Anderson Toyota operations. This is their, I believe, their maintenance and auto body shop. And then there's an existing office building to the north, Plan North, and then there's a wooded piece of residual lands where Citadel Haven terminates in the cul-de-sac, and then there's a small unused public right-of-way to a cell tower to the Plan Northeast. What they're planning to do is expand into the wooded area behind the office buildings and modify the existing parking lot at their auto repair and maintenance facility service shop for more inventory, as well as providing parking for vehicles that are being queued into the repair and service center. So you can see that there are a number of grand trees, 5, actually 6, and one is kind of in the center. And due to its species and character and characteristics, they're asking approval to remove that one. So you can see the parking lot overlay or underneath the protected trees and the grand trees here. There's a blow up of the area. So they'll provide a new curb cut off of Citadel Haven Drive to access the parking area, provide a couple of very sizable landscape islands to for the other grand trees to be preserved, meet the internal landscape requirements as far as parking lot islands, and then a dumpster area, as you can see, and this one tree, as you see in red, being asked for removal. Again, this is a survey of the trees and their species, size, and grades. We're dealing with tree number 6, which is a double 12-12 yellow poplar or full poplar with a V-shaped crotch and has a hollow. This is the picture of the double stem Pula poplar up close, and then you can see there is a pocket of decay, some actual water sitting in it at the base. Staff recommends approval, and again, this is kind of based on the value of the vehicles that would be parked in here. I don't think I would want to have my vehicle stored in that parking lot with this tree. Even if we were to give it sufficient room, it's so tall that it would be subject to, if you were to clear some trees out from around it, it would be so tall and subject to not only lightning strikes, but wind, and with that weak connection in the decay. So staff recommends approval with the condition that 18 caliber inches of native trees be planted on the project site or on the Anderson Toyota campus. Must have a certified arborist treat and prune the grand and protect the trees to be preserved that are within 25 feet of the proposed improvements, and must use 4-foot chain link fence as tree protection barricades. So with that, I'll go back to that plan, and we will recognize I have 2 Erics, I believe. Raise your hand, Eric. I forget, not Eric. Eric with Hoyt. Actually, I'm sorry, Alex Horner. Alex, I'm sorry. we promote Alex Horner. Alex, I apologize. Can you hear us? Alex, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you, Eric.
I apologize for that.
All good.
It's been a long day. I'll hand it over to our chairman, Mr. Hugie.
Good afternoon, is it Mr. Horner?
Yes, sir.
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Yep. Alex Warner, 37 Brayton Circle, Charleston.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. You may proceed.
Appreciate everybody's time. Like Eric said, we're only looking to remove one of the grand trees, and it's in poor health. And it's especially detrimental due to our fixed access location, which is required to align with the driveway across the street. And it kind of lines up with that access point. We agree with the staff recommendations and be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Does any staff member have a question or questions for Mr. Horner?
I do not.
All right, thank you. Mr. Horner, is there anyone else in your team who you would like to speak?
Kyle, do you want to say anything?
This is Kyle Hoyt. Just we appreciate everybody's time and appreciate Eric's staff report. We're happy to answer any questions.
Okay, can you please give your name, your full name and address for the record, sir?
Yes, my name is Kyle Hoyt. My address is 396 Evian Way, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Schultz, do we have any other information regarding this application?
No additional information, and Mr. Chair, nobody signed up to speak in opposition or in favor of the project, nor did I receive any written comments.
So we will close this for public discussion and entertain a motion from the board.
I think with this being the only grand tree and its location on the site, I think there's a good case, and also the condition of the tree, I think, and the use of the lot doesn't warrant trying to save it. So I would be in favor if of this application.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'm sorry, was that you, Mrs. Ravenel?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. So we have a motion to approve, which has been seconded. We'd like to put it to a vote. I'll start with you, Mrs. DeChantis.
I'm in favor.
Mrs. Ravenel,
I in favor.
Mr. Webb.
I in favor.
I am also in favor of the application. You have approval, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to agenda item B2, application number 2110-06-B2, 1521 Savannah Highway. Again, this is in West Ashley, moving down the street, and TMS number 349-01-00-016. Request a variance from section 54-327 to omit the 15 trees per acre requirement. The owner is VCKH Magnolia LLC. The applicant is Earth Source Engineering, and this site is zoned GBA. That's actually a competitor of our previous applicant. So this is the application. I asked the applicant to be more specific with his hardship test, and he replied with this statement. So as you can see here, we're dealing with two parcels. The property line between the two parcels has already been abandoned. The parcel to the right used to house fire station number 11 on Savannah Highway. The parcel at the intersection of Markfield Drive and Savannah Highway used to be the IHOP many years ago. It was demolished a few years back, and it's been used by the Baker Motor Company for a used car lot. With the purchase of the fire station, he is planning to redevelop both parcels. As you can see here, now the property line is abandoned. Used to be 1517, 1521 Savannah Highway. If anybody's driven by the site, the fire station has been scraped. We have a wonderful live oak, as you can see on the right-hand side of this image, which will be preserved. I believe that the trees in question were probably on a fence line that existed, or maybe not just the trees. They might have been right behind the old IHOP restaurant, but they're, in my opinion, volunteers. The cedar trees, as you can see here from street view, are they're kind of leaning toward one side. I don't know if the wind had pushed them in years past, or they just grew away from a structure, or I don't know exactly. The steel building in the back that used to be on the fire station house had just some volunteer trees growing on the right-hand side of it, hackberry trees. So the proposal is to demolish the station, obviously, and remove these trees. And that's a close-up. And build a new two-story auto dealership building. And of course, good urbanism and the way West Ashley planned West Ashley, we're encouraging very high quality architecture to address the public realm. So the building will be in the corner of Markfield and Savannah Highway. We have worked real hard with this applicant. There was a proposal to maintain a curb cut or modify an existing curb cut. There were two around the firehouse and then one at the IHOP, and we kind of convinced them to use an existing curb cut at the dealership building next door. And they studied that, and they are. We'll get a 25-foot landscape buffer across the front of this property. The previous two uses were legal non-conforming. They did not have that buffer. The live oak, as you can see, the tree on plan right will be preserved. The existing driveway for the firehouse is basically on top of the trunk, and there's a drain inlet there, which they'll abandon in place and fill with flowable fill, so they don't have to dig it up and disturb roots. And then you see the layout for the inventory and visitors to the dealership. The curb cut on Markfield will be as far south as possible. Again, a good thing to get it away from the intersection of the major corridor. So, with this layout, it just became difficult to try and maintain protected trees in the layout. If you can envision where that property line was, it's basically where those three islands are in the center left of the parking layout. So here are the trees. The hackberries are just maintaining themselves, hardly really performing. If you were to try and maintain a eastern red cedar in a parking lot island, I think we would still disrupt a good portion of its root system, whichever way it found its necessary nutrients and moisture with that driveway. The hackberries, again, we're seeing hackberry death throughout the city. These have not succumbed to that disease or fungus, whatever. I don't think it's been determined what's hitting the hackberry trees, but they're not in any good shape really. You can see some cavities in them. So with that said, staff recommends approval to plant 40 caliper inches of recommended canopy trees on the site. It's going to be difficult. They can upsize their interior parking lot trees and plant more around the perimeter, and must provide a landscape plan for both design review board and TRC review and approval. So with that said, we need to recognize Mr. Eric Latson.
Hey, can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, yes, we can. Is there anybody else that we need to recognize, Eric?
No, sir, it is just me here.
Okay, I want to turn it over to our chairman, Mr. Hugie.
Good afternoon, Mr. Latson. Can you provide your full name and address for the record, please?
Eric Rashawn Latson, Earthsource Engineering, 962 Houston Northcutt Boulevard.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please move forward with your presentation, sir.
Thank you. Eric did a pretty good job of explaining the situation, and I appreciate him meeting with me on site to discuss the condition of these trees. Some of them we originally were trying to save them, but after an evaluation of the health, they ended up being included in our proposal to remove. But the majority of these trees that are protected that we're proposing to remove were located in the drive aisles for the site, and that was greatly affecting the circulation. And there really wasn't much workaround space considering the size of the lot. So we thought best to approach the removal of the trees.
All right. Does any board member have a question of Mr. Latson or questions for Mr. Latson? All right. Mr. Schultz, do we have any other information provided regarding this application?
No, sir. Nobody registered to speak in favor or oppose the application, nor did I receive any written comment.
Thank you, sir. So we will close this for public discussion and entertain a motion from the board.
I just had a comment that I think it's great that, or I know it's a required buffer, but I'm glad that they're providing and not seeking a variance from that 25-foot buffer. There's a lot of non-conforming uses along that part of Savannah Highway, and so I think it's looks like a good site plan.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Webb, and also I think they're affected. If I understand the history of the property, these were two separate properties before, and the way they are combining them, and it appears that they're using the space to maximize use and continue to be environmentally friendly, if you will. So
I think the plan looks great. I live just down the street from this, so I'm excited to see that area redeveloped, and I would move to approve.
thank you, Mr. Rabineau. Mr. Schultz, do you, and this is just a question that I had pop up. Will the majority of their cars be inside the building?
That's a good question for the applicant. I believe a good bit of inventory will be outside as well. Again, this project, from what I understand, did receive initial comment from DRB staff, and they were a little troubled with the architecture. I mean, there's, West Ashley deserves great architecture, but they were a little, I understand they're regrouping on the actual architecture of the building. But yeah, as you can see, there's a big, a fairly large, like plaza where they would enter in into the building. And I think I actually saw a plan that the cars will be maybe even displayed on the second level, like a mezzanine. So a lot of glass on this building. DRB has to do their thing, but whatever happens, I think it's going to be a pretty phenomenal looking building. But I believe the cars will be, a couple of them or a few will be displayed inside and then inventory outside as well.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Ravenel, I don't want to put words in your mouth. May I entertain your comment as a motion to approve?
Yes, I'll move to approve.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. We'll move for a vote. I'll start with you, Mr. Webb.
Aye in favor.
You, Mrs. Ravenel,
I in favor.
and Mrs. DeSantis.
I in favor.
I am also in favor. Thank you, Mr. Latson.
All right, thank you all. You have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, our final item, item B3, application number 1220-06-B3, 1560 Meeting Street. This is in the Silver Hill, Magnolia area of the Upper Peninsula. TMS number 464100061 006 120 121 123 and 124. Request a variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of one grand tree. The owner is Cooper River Corp. LLC, and the application is Cincinnati LLC. The property is zoned UP. This is the application. This is their hardship test narrative. We're dealing with one category 1 willow oak. The combined properties, I listed a few extra TMS numbers because there were one building was condominiumized. So, but you can see two basic tracts being combined into one. It's in the UP, the Upper Peninsula District, which is a district encouraged to encourage higher density development. As long as they do high quality design, if they go above certain number of stories, they have to meet incentive points and so on and so forth. But the city recognized that the peninsula was going to grow, and this is a district that allows higher density development, whether it be commercial, retail, and or multifamily residential. As you can see here, it's used as a laydown area. There's a couple buildings that have been used over time, different uses: office, contractor's office, actually a real estate office, a warehouse type structure with a loading dock, and then a lot of open space, a lot of residual. Please note the shadows in the trees. They're all palm trees. I recognize as a palm tree as one that can be easily transplanted. So we don't advertise those in this case to not meet the 15 trees per acre requirement. They'll transplant them and incorporate them into a landscape plan. And if they don't meet, or if they don't make the transplant, they just plant a new palm. They're readily available, as you know. If you can tell at the, I would say the south west corner of the building in the top upper left, that's where the willow oak sits, right above that parking area, between the parking and that building. We'll look at it in a minute. And then there were a couple of multi-stem, falling apart, half uprooted red mulberry trees that I issued a grade F4. So this is the view into the site, open field, the palm trees and the buildings in the background. This is the driveway off of Greenleaf Street, and the tree in question is right there anchoring the corner of that building. This is a set of documents submitted by the applicant. So there's a large team of owners and architects and landscape architects. Existing conditions, proposed layout. So basically L-shaped property. The majority of the frontage on Greenleaf and Meeting Street will be a mixed use, some retail, office maybe, and then the residential components with open and green spaces to the south. And then the majority will be in a parking structure in the shorter portion of the L, as you can see there. Very early in the design stages, but again, you can see how it's starting to address, the building starts to address the public realm of Greenleaf Street. They will have to improve that intersection with possibly a left turn lane. And then fire access around this structure is very important. You can see there will be a fire lane on the south side with amenity spaces and green spaces, and then the parking structure with access off of Greenleaf. Again, the two orange are really should be red. They're the mulberry trees that were basically falling apart and half dead. The sea gray tree is the yellow tree. There's just the mulberries that were falling apart, and the 26-inch willow oak. So there's the applicant's photos provided. This is the report from the certified arborist. Note that it states that the utility has been pruning the tree on one side, and there's evidence of that and some decay starting in those pruning cuts. So this is the shot I took. You can see a fairly large utility pole, and you can see how half the crown, this is flushed out. I don't know when the last round of pruning occurred. They're usually on a 3 or 5 year cycle, but the tree obviously was pretty much pruned off. The half of it was pruned off, and it's pushing water sprouts and new growth out that side, but kind of a lopsided canopy, side trimmed by the utility. Staff recommends approval with the condition that 100% of the DBH inches lost be planted in canopy trees on the project site and must provide a landscape plan to be approved by DRB and TRC. So with that said, I'll go back up to that plan and keep that plan. We can flip flop back and forth. Mr. Todd Richardson and Forrest Evans is the arborist, and John Hillman.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Eric, Mr. Chairman, board members and staff. I appreciate you hearing us tonight. My name is Todd Richardson.
Right, Todd, can you identify who else on your team? Are they with you or?
Yes, we have a couple people here. So we have John Hillman, who's representing Fides Development. They are the purchaser and developer of the multifamily project. We also have Forrest Evans, who is the arborist from Natural Directions,
okay,
providing consultation.
Right. Chairman Hughie will swear you in.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Richardson. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, please state your name and address for the record and proceed with your presentation.
Absolutely. My name is Todd Richardson. I'm the project landscape architect from Synchronicity. My address is 69 Morris Street, Suite 101, Charleston, South Carolina.
Thank you, sir. You may proceed.
Thank you. Thank you all for hearing us tonight. We're pleased to present this project to you, and it's a bit of an interesting property and circumstances that have led us here tonight. So the project you have before you is a great addition to the Upper Peninsula. This will be providing much needed affordable and market rate housing, and also bringing along quality architecture. We have a combined team of local experts from LS3P for architecture, Seaman Whiteside, and of course ourselves. So we are very excited to bring this project forward. It's part of Synchronicity's mission statement to provide affordable housing whenever and wherever at any scale we can in the Charleston region, especially on the peninsula. So the project requires several factors to be met. One of them is site massing, which is part of the Upper Peninsula. It is an encouraged urban district with multiple heights. We are currently at 6 stories with this development, along with a rear adjacent appendage, if you will, of a parking structure. If you're familiar with the Upper Peninsula, this is located at the intersection of Meeting Street and Greenleaf. Greenleaf is the road that leads you to the Kinder Morgan properties. So we're in a bit of an interesting industrial context. Meeting Street is developing and moving along in the fashion that we all hope for the Upper Peninsula. The properties to the east of us are still very much in a heavy industrial usage. So what's great is we're providing an attractive urban architectural curtain to those properties as they hopefully will transition in the future. And you see the aerial here, as Eric mentioned, we've had a sundry of uses on the property over the years. One of my favorites was Jack Rudy cocktail accessories. Really enjoy their bourbon cherries. Hope they get a great new location close by. We have 30 palm trees on the property, which we will be relocating into the future landscape buffer, which will happen to the southern and western portions of the property. We have encountered the willow oak, which has over the years had its root system included by the asphalt of the drive and parking area, as well as getting half of its hair cut on a regular basis by formerly SCE&G and now Dominion. So we have a tree that is in fair condition and is in consistent decline. Those were our findings, as well as from our arborist team members. The project is a positive addition to the city of Charleston, as well as to the Upper Peninsula District. We feel in meeting the massing and intent of the zoning that this is a warranted removal. So we respectfully request the removal of the willow oak, and we comply with the staff's recommendations for mitigation and replanting. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Does any member of staff have a question for Mr. Richardson? Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you.
Do any of the other members of your team wish to speak?
They're available if questions are warranted.
All right. Mr. Schultz, do we have any other information concerning this application?
Mr. Chairman, nobody registered to speak in favor or oppose the project, nor did I receive any written comments.
All right. So we will close this for public discussion and entertain a motion from the board. Or if any board members have a question for Mr. Richardson or any other member of his team.
I'm trying to figure out what this property line here is. Is that Meeting Street, or is that, there's another parcel between it and Meeting, correct?
No, ma'am, there is, well, so for the rear, we have a reverse L, if you will. There is a Jehovah's Witness worship center that is bounding us on 2 sides of the parcel. Our parcel is a combination of 1560 Meeting Street and 1505 Greenleaf Street. So
Okay,
it will be an aggregation of 2 parcels. So what you're looking at
You all see my cursor?
I see. Yep.
So it's
I got it.
This line here will be abandoned. It becomes one parking deck here, and the main body of the building will be here.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes, ma'am.
Eric, is the parking off of Greenleaf?
So the parking, the building is still under design, as Todd alluded to, but keep in mind that this is primarily, if you're watching my cursor now, the fire access lane, and the primary entrance to visitor parking, resident parking, retail parking is here, the parking deck. And is this a turnaround, Todd, or is that going into the building?
Yes, that is the secondary fire access as well. So we have a requirement of 2 fire access points, Mr. Chair and Board, and that is the secondary one, as well as a fire protected parking structure.
And then this line kind of represents the improvements to the intersection based on the traffic impact study and the industrial use down the street. You know, there's a terminal down the street, so you get truck traffic. And then what was the unit count, Todd? 320, you said?
Yes, we're around the 320 mark right now. That's correct. And we have, so we'll be addressing Greenleaf and meeting streetscapes with urban architectural accents, as well as streetscape plannings and public realm engagement. So we're going to be fixing up Greenleaf, especially a whole heck of a lot.
Well, yeah, presently Greenleaf has no.
Yeah, that's Greenleaf. That's meeting the picture.
There's no sidewalk. There's a couple of curb cuts. This will get curb and gutter, sidewalk, street lights, street trees, and the meeting street frontage as well.
And Mr. Richardson, I apologize. I know you said this in your presentation. What will be the future use of the development?
It's multifamily, and it's going to be with a significant portion of affordable housing, and then there will be market rate housing. We will have some retail commercial amenity space that will front on Meeting Street. So we have coordinated with Councilman Mitchell significantly on this project, as well as key members of city staff.
Well, downtown can definitely use affordable housing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a motion from the board?
What are the staff recommendations? Could you throw those up, Eric?
Yes. So it's a category 1 tree. Again, you can see its condition. 100% of the DBH inches lost, so 26 inches of new canopy trees on the project site.
And we're also recompensing for the mulberries, the 10 inches for the mulberries, and relocating 30 palms that are existing on site.
I'll make a motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Thank you, Mrs. Ravenel. Do we have a second?
Jennifer DeShantis, I second.
Thank you, Mrs. DeShantis. So we have a motion before the board to approve. We'll move for a vote. Mr. Webb?
Aye in favor.
Mrs. Ravenel?
Aye in favor.
Mrs. DeShantis?
Aye in favor.
I am also in favor. You have approval, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you. And
Mr. Schultz?
that concludes the October 6th Board of Zoning Appeals site design meeting, and thank you for all attending.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kelvin. Good job.
Kelvin, you did a very good job. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Sorry about earlier. I